Ever visited a state and thought, this place is absolute paradise. I could totally live here forever. Yeah, we've all been there, swept away by the charm of a new place. But hold up. Before you pack your bags and start looking at real estate, the locals of these tourist hotspots might just have a few things to say. Today, we're taking you on a tour of the top 10 states that are awesome for a vacation, but a complete nightmare to live in. Think beaches, theme parks, and those Instagram-worthy views. But behind the picture-perfect moments, the locals are stuck picking up the tab. From Florida's theme park madness to Hawaii's housing crisis driven by tourists, let's dive into the places where tourism thrives, but the residents, not so much. Number 10. South Carolina. South Carolina, the land of southern charm, sun-soaked beaches, and those cute, historic coastal towns that seem straight out of a postcard. Think Charleston, Myrtle Beach, Hilton Head. They pull in crowds like a magnet. But here's the thing. While tourists are living their best life, snapping pics under Spanish moss and lounging at resort beaches, locals are left to pick up the pieces. The real estate market? A nightmare. Vacation homes and short-term rentals are driving up prices, forcing out long-term residents. The weekend traffic? A headache. Emergency services? Stretched to their limits. Small towns are stuck in a never-ending loop of growth, over-tourism, and the struggle to preserve their soul. Nearly 61% of South Carolina residents are ready to see fewer tourists. And who can blame them? Number 9. Louisiana is a cultural goldmine, from the soulful jazz in the streets to the swamp tours and Mardi Gras madness. It's a haven for tourists. And let's not forget New Orleans, that iconic city that draws people from all over the world. But while the tourists are busy indulging in spicy crawfish and jazz music, the locals are dealing with the fallout. It's not just the crazy crowds in the French Quarter. It's the soaring cost of living, overloaded emergency services, and the fact that all that tourism cash doesn't really trickle down to the neighborhoods that need it. Mardi Gras might be wild and fun for visitors, but it can get downright dangerous. And as you get older, that party vibe loses its charm. 65% of Louisianans say they'd gladly take fewer tourists off their streets, and with 42.6 million visitors a year, that's a whole lot of people causing a whole lot of stress. Number 8. Alaska. Alaska is often painted as the last frontier, and who could blame anyone for dreaming about it? With glaciers, whales, rugged mountains, and wilderness that seems untouched, it's no wonder people flock here. But for those who live in towns like Skagway and Juneau, the reality is much more complicated. In these remote communities, infrastructure must be built to handle the influx of tourists during the summer months, but much of it sits idle for the rest of the year. As the cruise ship industry booms, the strain on local communities grows, and many residents leave once the tourist season is over. For the ones who stay, it's often a ghost town vibe in the off-season. As tourism continues to rise, so does the pressure on the environment, local businesses, and workers who barely make ends meet. Locals are starting to push back against the tourist influx, and a whopping 66% of Alaskans are calling for fewer visitors. With only 2.6 million tourists each year, it may not sound like a lot, but it's a heavy toll on the state's already fragile infrastructure. Number 7. California. The state of dreams, right? With its beaches, mountains, wine country, and glitzy Hollywood life, it seems like a paradise. But for those living there, it's not always the picture-perfect scene you'd expect. While tourists swarm the national parks, coastline, and famous landmarks, locals are left to deal with the downsides. Yosemite. It's a nightmare during peak season with traffic jams, overcrowded trails, and limited parking. The Big Sur coastline. Beautiful, yes, but try finding a parking spot during tourist season. And then there's the housing crisis. Soaring prices, fueled by second homes and short-term rentals, push out residents. The environmental toll isn't pretty either. Think trail erosion, water shortages, and stressed infrastructure. While tourism brings in billions, locals don't always feel the benefits. In fact, 71% of Californians say they'd prefer fewer tourists. With 250 million visitors every year, it's no wonder the locals are feeling the heat. Number 6. Washington. From the iconic Space Needle in Seattle to the misty rainforests of the Olympic Peninsula, Washington State is a tourist's dream. The natural beauty is undeniable. Think Mount Rainier, Puget Sound, and world-class hiking. But for residents, it's a different story. Housing costs in the metro areas have skyrocketed, and rural towns near national parks are being overwhelmed by tourist demand. The roads, transit systems, and basic infrastructure simply weren't built to handle the surge of visitors every year. In Seattle, the constant stream of tourists swarms local hotspots, creating crowded streets and overflowing attractions. Small towns near national parks are also feeling the squeeze as trails and parks become more overcrowded each year. With 25.9 million visitors annually, it's clear that the tourist economy is putting a strain on local life. A massive 71% of Washington residents would love to see fewer tourists. But given the numbers, that's a tall order. Number 5. Arizona. Arizona's sweeping desert landscapes, the Grand Canyon, and Monument Valley are nothing short of breathtaking. It's no wonder the state is a top destination for outdoor enthusiasts. But for the locals living near these famous sites, the experience can be a bit less glamorous. Trails, roads, and local resources are stretched to their limits during tourist season. With skyrocketing property values and a growing shift toward short-term rentals, many residents are being pushed out of their own communities. Local governments struggle to maintain infrastructure that was never meant for such high volumes of visitors. In areas around the Grand Canyon, locals often feel like they're living in the shadow of tourism, without reaping the benefits. Arizona attracts 45 million visitors every year, and 71% of the state's population would prefer to see fewer tourists. Number 4. Colorado. Colorado's iconic mountains, world-class ski resorts, and breathtaking national parks are the stuff of outdoor dreams. But for the locals living in the towns that draw tourists by the truckload, it's becoming more of a nightmare. Housing prices are soaring, especially in mountain towns that rely heavily on seasonal workers and tourism. The local economy is almost entirely dependent on tourism, but the people who keep the wheels turning can't afford to live where they work. Add in overcrowded trails, forest fire risks, and parking lots bursting at the seams during peak season, and it's clear Colorado is walking a fine line between preserving its natural beauty and managing tourism's ravenous demands. Locals in places like Aspen and Boulder feel like their voices are drowned out by the constant wave of visitors. In fact, 72% of Coloradans are ready for fewer tourists, and with nearly 100 million visitors every year, that's no small ask.